This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome aboard, folks. Here we are, Dr. Charles Parker, back once again at Core Brain Journal, and this is episode 055, and we have the privilege of listening today to our guest, Arlene Foreman, who is outside of Philadelphia. And I'm going to confess right off the bat, she is an old buddy of mine. We've had a great time sharing clients, working together. Arlene, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
You're welcome. My pleasure, Chuck.
So, a little bit of background about Arlene. One of the reasons I was hoping that she would come on board and appreciate her taking the time to share her insights with our audience is she's a very unusual person. She's a licensed professional counselor, yes, but she's far more than that, in that she's an example, and I know there are others in the country that are like this, but people are so worried about boundaries and what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong. Arlene is a person who is devoted to learning. She is going to, if she doesn't know about it, she's going to chase it down and find out something about it. And Arlene, I want to thank you again publicly for the things that you've shared with me, and I know I'm going to learn something from you again today. So I may be a board-certified psychiatrist with 45 years of experience, but I know I'm going to learn something from Arlene Foreman today because she is deeply into so many interesting things. So I'm just going to say, as a quick announcement in terms of identifying who she is as a person, is that she has 4 websites. One is arleneforeman.com. She's got a website, which I'm going to put all these in the show notes rather than say them all out. She's got a website on marriage counseling. She's got another website on anger management. And she's got another website on anxiety. This is an example of what I was saying just a moment ago. Arlene covers a variety of interesting bases, and the people that work with her love her to death because she is no BS. She comes right down to the situation, tells you what's going on. So, Arlene, tell us a little bit about yourself on a personal level, how you are, where you are, and what you're doing with yourself today.
I am a mother of 2 grown sons and a granddaughter that I adore. And I love my work, and I have a garden of flowers. So my house is surrounded by flowers. And when I'm not studying, I'm pulling weeds and I'm fertilizing and digging. That's my other life.
So you're like me, you're probably devoted to the compost pile.
Well, actually, I just got a compost bucket somebody dropped off for me, and they pick it up every 2 weeks.
I am totally crazy about compost. I mean, I got the worms. I got a compost bin.
There you go.
I don't do it anymore because I just don't even have the time, but I'm with you 100% on the gardening. So then, how did you become the person you are in terms of what drove you to take these inquiries as far as you have? I mean, you got the training, but what happened to you that you do characteristically dive so deeply into these various subjects?
Chuck, I think it's my brain. It never shuts up. It's always looking for something to study, and my brain never gets tired.
It's just plain old curiosity can do it.
Right.
There's no question about it. And what's so much fun, and we share this, so I know this about you, because there's the excitement of getting it right.
Exactly.
I mean, when you don't know and you're in the darkness, this is one of the reasons we're doing Core Brain Journal, is because there's an excitement to a different discovery. Hey, this is something that might work. I've tried everything else. This person's a treatment failure. They're mixed up in this or that way of thinking about it. And doggone, this might work. Let's see what happens.
Well, when I feel that way, I send them to you. I make it your problem.
You're very kind. But we're cut from the same cloth, girl. I'll tell you that. No question about it. I mean, I do everything. I say, listen, if you're not talking to Arlene about this, you're not doing what you need to do, because there's a limit to what I can do, and she's going to help you out. So let's talk about what you think is the most current kind of exciting, interesting, new direction that you've turned recently? You've sent some stuff out, and I'm not going to steal your thunder because to me it's totally interesting. And I said I know I'm going to learn from you about it. What is it we need to learn from you today that's burning for you to really talk about?
Well, I'm talking about how to increase your love hormone, because that's really what it's all about, is loving people. And I wanted to study how we do it. How is the body doing it?
Mm-hmm. So you're really talking about the biology of love.
Exactly.
In a very interesting way.
Well,
go ahead.
It's the biology, and it's intertwined with the psychology of love. It's you can't extricate it.
Well, the biology, when you said hormone, that was obviously the biology.
Right.
And we can have you back on another one to really hit the psychology, because if we try to hit both of them, we will be in mental spaghetti.
Right.
But if we were to talk about the love hormone, just what is that love hormone?
Chuck, what I've done is, you mentioned my websites. I have 3 specialties, and that's couples counseling, anxiety, and anger management. And I start looking at what ties them all together. And what ties them all together is adrenaline and cortisol that's not being managed. Mm-hmm. So then I start asking, how do you manage cortisol? Well, I found oxytocin. Did you know when you secrete oxytocin, there's something in oxytocin that inhibits adrenaline?
See, I told you I was going to be learning something from you. Right there it is. Is
that amazing?
That's very interesting.
So then I was listening to a CD, and they were talking about blood flow in the brain, and it like blew me away. And this is how it works. You just said something to me that I took as an insult. You said something that's, like, well, Arlene really doesn't know what she's talking about, or whatever. My right prefrontal cortex got very upset. It pulls blood from the left prefrontal cortex. Well, the left prefrontal cortex, if it had enough blood, would say, Chuck didn't mean anything by it. He was just kidding, or I misunderstood it. But the right negative part of the brain pulled blood from the left. So all the energy is in, I'm angry, I'm scared, I'm upset, how dare you, is what I'm all wrapped up in. Now, this is 2016. But inside my brain is an amygdala that's probably about 5 million years old at least. And it's keeping an eye on that right prefrontal cortex. And it says, oh my God, Chuck is a tiger. Mm-hmm. He's very dangerous. Mm-hmm. The amygdala pulls blood from the whole brain. So the part of my brain that remembers, the hippocampus that remembers that Chuck is my friend, doesn't have enough blood to remember. So here I am with a negative prefrontal cortex and a brain that, if you would see like functional MRIs, when you're really scared and you're really angry, you got a brain on fire, full of blood, overstimulated neurons. So then the question is, what do I do now? Is this the way I have to live and wait an hour or 2 or 3? I got couples, they're going to wait 3 days till they cool off, a month. Well, if you step outside your brain, there's a fellow by the name of Richard Schwartz, and he says, you are not your brain. He writes a book, You Are Not Your Brain. There's also a fellow, his name is Stephen Hayes. Stephen Hayes is the founder of ACT. And he uses the word self as context. And he's saying the same thing. Step outside and look at what's going on inside. So I step outside and I look at the inside. And would you believe, Chuck, just naming the feeling calms the brain. I feel angry at Chuck. Mm-hmm. Just stepping outside myself and naming the feeling. Because when I name the feeling, I need the left prefrontal cortex. Well, the left prefrontal cortex is the language part of the brain. Well, we need blood to do that. So it pulls blood from the right brain to the left brain.
Interesting point.
Well, when the amygdala, it's keeping an eye on the right brain, that old reptilian, old limbic system kind of brain, when it looks and it says, oh, there's not much blood anymore. It calms down. It puts the blood in the right places in the brain. The hippocampus has the blood it needs, and it remembers, Chuck is my friend. He didn't mean anything by it. And now, if I stay outside my brain and say, what do I feel? I felt angry. What do I need? I needed to remember that Chuck is my friend and he didn't mean anything by it. Everything calms down.
So there's a balance that then occurs between the two sides of the brain based on simple blood flow. I mean, I said simple, but it's obviously not simple, but to simplify it, that is what happens.
Right. And it's obvious when you have blood flow, you have the nutrients, the oxygen, the glycogen, the neurotransmitters that the brain needs to do all of this processing is coming with the blood.
Very interesting. I mean, there are people that have practices in the country that just focus on balancing the brain.
Right.
And that's Dr. Malello does that. He's very strong on getting the two sides of the brain connected correctly.
Now, what I'm going to do at this point, I'm mad at you, but I did all this work, and now I feel better. But you know what? I'm still full of adrenaline and cortisol. It didn't go away so fast. Mm-hmm. So now I start asking myself, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. You know, the nerve that's coming out of, the medulla in the back and covering the whole body, and that vagal nerve is in touch with the amygdala and everything going on in the brain, so it's got the whole body on alert. We're full of adrenaline and cortisol. Now what? Well, there's a Russian doctor in the 50s. His name was Buteyko, Buteyko. And his job was to watch dying people breathe as an intern. And he watched so many, he could predict within 10 minutes somebody was going to die. And he saw what healthy, normal, natural breathing is. The way babies breathe, the way animals breathe. But the short version of the Buteyko breathing is you take a short breath in, 3-4 seconds. That's all the body needs. That's all the oxygen the body needs. And a long, slow, gentle breath out, as long as I comfortably can. We need to hold carbon dioxide in the blood as long as we can. You know, the flip side of that is big breath in, short breath out. You know what that's called?
No.
Hyperventilating.
No.
Hyperventilating sets you off to a panic attack, right? Mm. Where you take a big breath and And we're able to do it so silently, we don't even know we're doing it and end up with severe anxiety panic attack. Well, Botanko saw, just do the opposite. Take a short breath in and a big, and you do it lovingly, gently, taking in tiny bits of air. When you breathe that way, you stimulate the vagal nerve.
Bingo.
When you stimulate the vagal nerve stimulates the hypothalamus to make oxytocin, to go into the pituitary gland and from there into the blood. And our blood has oxytocin.
That's not Oxycontin, just to be clear.
Yeah, I've had clients confused with that too. I'm glad you said that. No, oxytocin the body makes all by itself.
And that oxytocin then is a downstream derivative of vagal nerve in the parasympathetic system.
Well, the parasympathetic nervous system triggers it to secrete it. Okay? And now we've got oxytocin in the blood. Now here's what happens when we have oxytocin. We trust, we feel love, we feel close, we feel relaxed. And most important is it secretes a substance that inhibits adrenaline. So you're decreasing the adrenaline in your blood.
Very interesting. That is so doggone interesting.
Is that amazing?
That is amazing. So you then, I mean, I haven't talked with anybody that we share clients, as I said, listeners before, but I haven't really talked to clients that we share about this protocol. You must do this with clients.
Well, yeah, it's the way I work, but I didn't pay much attention to the biochemistry of it until I start preparing a talk for you. And I start looking like, what's the chemistry under what I'm trying to do? You know, I've been doing this work for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I sat to prepare this, and I said, what's the common denominator in all of this? People don't want to suffer. They don't want to be full of anxiety. They don't want to be from adrenaline. They don't want a stiff neck and shoulder pains and back pains from cortisol. They want to feel good. So then I start saying, they come to the office pumped with adrenaline and cortisol.
That is so true.
What do they need to feel good? And you know, when I start doing my research, do you know there's over 200 kinds of therapy? And when they study the most effective therapy, guess what it is?
What's that?
The relationship with the therapist.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of therapy you use. And you know, relationships, guess what they do? They make oxytocin.
Isn't that interesting?
So when
interesting.
Isn't that amazing? So when I'm talking in a way that people can feel they trust me and they feel relaxed and they feel that I'm knowledgeable, they start relaxing, they start connecting with me, and they start secreting oxytocin. Humans trigger oxytocin in each other.
Isn't that amazing?
Just, you know, if you're we know that if you walk into a room and somebody's really mad and on fire, what happens? My heart starts to pound. It's like, right? Well, if you walk into the presence, let's make the extreme of it. You know, a guru or whatever. Walk into his presence, and you go, and you start secreting oxytocin.
So now, apropos of that, now this is interesting. I'm going to ask you a question. Obviously, I don't know if you know the answer, and I don't want to put you on the spot. But does meditation then, independent of working with a relationship and a caring therapeutic relationship, is there any evidence that meditation or yoga encourages the development and the active of oxytocin?
Well, I have a list here, and I can just kind of go through it on what does cause oxytocin. I'm going to tell you something really funny. You know, one of the things that causes oxytocin, if you're at the gym and you're working really hard, you've got adrenaline and cortisol. You know how you get your oxytocin back? Stick your tongue out and put your face in cold water.
Stick your tongue out. How does that
so your tongue is in the cold water too.
Oh, really? Okay.
And you get a good pump of oxytocin.
Is that right? I wonder what the guys would say at the gym if they saw me do this. That'd be a whole nother thing. I knew Parker was a psychiatrist, but this is beyond. I mean, they already tease me anyway. Like, what's your opinion, Parker? Like they really care.
Well, tell them to try it.
We're gonna have a meeting on Saturday. Everybody's gonna stick their face in their tongue in cold water.
And your eyes too, but close it first.
It's so funny. That is amazing. So there's evidence that will actually put the kibosh on the overpump.
Right. We're hardwired for love and connection. 10 minutes of warm contact, and that's just sitting with somebody. If you want to touch them, you can touch them. If you don't, you don't. Just sit with somebody you care about, and they feel cared about. Secretes oxytocin. It raises the oxytocin in the blood.
Well, I know some of my skeptical listeners are going to say, hey, that sounds very interesting, but it sounds a little frou-frou. I mean, is that documented at all in these books that you were talking about here, that they talk about oxytocin?
Oh, yeah. I've got 2 books on oxytocin. If you want, I can give you the names of them. One's called Oxytocin by Paul Stoller. Another one is called The Chemistry of Connection by Susan Kuchinskis. But I didn't keep records of. I'll have to look it up. But I found a lot of this on sites in the internet too when I was doing my research.
Listeners, those are going to be on the show notes if you want to go over there, because I was writing them down while she was talking. I'm going to find them and put them in the show notes. So.
Here's something else interesting. Oxytocin produces healthy microbes in the gut.
Oh my gosh.
You know, we talk about probiotics and we need microbes in the gut. Now here's something even more interesting. These microbes that oxytocin produce oxytocin. Look at the circle.
Oh my gosh.
And they disappear in a stressful environment. So get yourself chilled out, do all this work, make the oxytocin produce microbes, and then go out and have a big fight with somebody, and you're getting nowhere fast.
You'll have no juice.
Right.
You know, I don't know how much you're involved with the blog, but you would just love the interview. I think it's 033, I'm not sure, with Dr. Bill Miller on the hologenomic evolution of humankind. He's meta-Darwinism is his shtick. And he's looking at the fact that we don't really survive by survival of the fittest, that it's not a kill thing, it's a connection and a love thing. And
wow.
It's on a cellular microbiome level.
Right.
You would love his conversation. He's a very funny, very interesting guy. He's saying the same thing you are.
If you get really close to somebody or kiss somebody and you have oxytocin in you, guess what?
What? They
get oxytocin.
They do. That's very interesting. So let's pursue what we were talking about. I put you a little bit on the spot. You gave me some good books. I'm going to write those down. Chemistry of Connection and Oxytocin with Stoller. But let's take it to the next thing. What are some of the other things? Because I'm sure all of us, I know myself, are now interested in how does one do this? What are some of the other things that you were talking about? Obviously, kissing, being close, touching.
Give yourself a hug.
Now tell me about that. How does that happen?
If you just fold your arms and touch your upper arms, you secrete oxytocin. I'll tell you something interesting. I know people who create altars in their house, and they'll go to this altar when they want to meditate. Mm-hmm. If you create a spiritual place in your house, you train the brain. And when you walk into that space, you start secreting oxytocin.
That's interesting. Very.
And what you said about meditating, does meditating secrete oxytocin? Of course it does. And if you're meditating in this space, the oxytocin gets started before you even start to meditate.
Oh my gosh. That is very, very interesting. So then, and pardon me for taking this very interesting conversation into an application level, but I think it is of interest to myself and to listeners. So do you have a protocol that you work with individuals who are in marital discord, anxiety, or anger regarding some of the things we're talking about?
As I said before, the first thing is they need to trust me and to establish a relationship. In the process of working with, that starts the oxytocin going. Mm-hmm. But I also teach them, there's a couples counseling theorist, researcher. There aren't too many of them, but his name is John Gottman. And John Gottman came up with the term BIDS. And he did research where he would take people, put them in a hotel room like for a weekend or at least 24 hours, and he would check their blood pressure, their sugar levels. He would videotape them and then study the videos, and then go 5 years later and see if they're still together. Guess who won the contest? Who was there? Who lasted the longest?
Who was that?
The people with the BIDS. Guess what BIDS do? Stimulate oxytocin. And here's what BIDS are. You and I are in the kitchen. We're making breakfast, and I walk by you, and I just touch your back, or I smile at you. Or I say, you know what, I really enjoy that you're in the kitchen with me. I feel so lucky that you and I are sharing, making breakfast together. These are all BIDS that are inviting you to respond back to me with a smile or a touch or whatever. Now, I'm going to show you an example of what's not a BID. You and I are having breakfast, and I say to you, oh my God, it's so hot today, and the weatherman says it's going to be hotter tomorrow. And you say, is the toast done?
I can see how that would honk a person off right there.
Right. I don't care about the weather. I cared about chatting with you, and I offered you a bid, and you turned me down.
Yep.
You turned down enough of my bids, I quit offering them.
Yep.
But you keep responding to my bids. I get oxytocin. Makes me feel good. I like oxytocin. I like that good feeling. I'm going to give you more bids.
Actually, I think I'm getting long-distance oxytocin just talking to you.
I was hoping for that.
It's definitely happening right here, right now, in front of everybody. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way. It's wild. That is very, very interesting. Because we intuitively know, Arlene, what you're saying is exactly true.
Right. That's why I did the research, right. We feel it.
Yeah. You've got the research to back it up. But this is something we intuitively know when a relationship is going sour and when it's really working.
Right.
That is very, very interesting. So,
but see, if you have the concept of, we do it like intuitively, but if you have the concept of bids and you're having a little bit of stress with your wife, you go into the kitchen and you say to yourself, I'm going to offer bids.
Bingo. Now, what does the acronym stand for, BIDS?
There's no acronym. It's a bid. Like offering something.
I got you. It's like you're bidding on the prize.
Right. I'm offering myself to you.
I got you, right. Very interesting.
Now, I got another piece.
Okay.
There's a fellow by the name of Dr. Dan Siegel. And Dan Siegel is disciplining children upside down. And he says what children need, and I am going to add, us big people need it too. Mm-hmm. We need to be seen. We need to feel safe. We need to be soothed. And we need to feel secure. Mm-hmm. When we have all of that, it creates a secure attachment. Secure attachments, the body secretes oxytocin. Now, what does that mean to be seen? My son comes home from school and he cries that Johnny is calling him names. If I say, that's no big deal, come on, all he did was call you names, he didn't hit you, you're not seen. But if I say, you know what, that must have been embarrassing to you and humiliating to you that he was calling you these names in front of everybody and you didn't know what to do. I'm so sorry that happened. He feels seen, and he's not so alone. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then I offer him a safe place where he can tell me more about what just happened. And I'm not going to judge him. I'm not going to say, you're a big crybaby. You make a big deal out of nothing. I'm going to say to him, you can tell me more about that. I want to hear it. I can see how you're hurting and how upset you are. And I want you to feel safe to say anything you need to say about it. Mm-hmm. And now he's like cries a little bit. I remember my son must have been about 7 or 8, and he was hurting for something, and he started to cry, and he was crying and crying and crying, and he stopped. And I said, Jeffrey, are you done crying? And he went, not yet. And he cried some more. And I gave him the safe space to finish. And then you soothe. And then you say, I'm so sorry that happened. Can I hold you? What can I do to make you feel better? And then you make him feel secure. You can come to me anytime something like that happens, and I'll be here for you.
I just felt a long-distance hug right there, and I know a lot of our listeners did. That's definitely a soothe. I hope it doesn't take them off the road. I mean, it's so true.
That's the brilliance of Dan Siegel. And I'll tell you, when I use that with my clients, they cry. Mm-hmm. They cry because somehow, just what you said before, what we know about oxytocin, but we don't really know. We knew that this is what we need, but we couldn't conceptualize it. We needed Dan Siegel to do that for us. Mm-hmm. But when he does it, it's like, oh my God, if only my mother would have done that for me.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, we think of the people and the pain that we've seen so much in our lives working with individuals who are suffering, and how simple it would have been if somebody would have just taken a less critical, more supportive role in their development, in their growth process.
Exactly. And you see, when you respond like this, and I use this same paradigm for couples. I don't have to tell you about neuroplasticity. You're rewiring the brain. Yeah. From facing an incident that you're going to keep calling each other names and putting each other down, to having the same situation where we have the skills to create secure attachment. Because that's all we really want from our partner, is secure attachment. I need to feel securely attached to you because I'm biologically programmed to attach. And if I can't get a secure attachment, I get an anxious attachment, an insecure attachment, and then got to call a therapist. Or take meds.
Yeah, right. Oh, gosh. Isn't that so true, though?
Now, go ahead.
No, you please go ahead.
Okay. I can share with you a story about one of my clients. And their son is home with them and gets a text like 12 o'clock at night that his friend is at a rock concert and is thinking of committing suicide. Well, you know, kids today, it's like a big problem. Mm. And this fellow was terrified. And he told his parents. Well, his parents are my clients. So his parents could speak to him in a way that they could address how scared he was, what it was like for him to get that phone call. And they could be vulnerable enough to say to him, we don't know what to do. Let's call Arlene. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They came in for a session. And while this teenage boy is so scared and telling his story, his mom is not telling him, you should do this, you shouldn't have done this, why did you hang out with this kid? She didn't do that. She just sat there and supported him with her tears. She was vulnerable and open and just cried and put her arm around him. And his dad didn't cry, but you could see tiny tears leaking out like he was so distraught too. And both of them making it very clear to this young man without saying a word, you are seen and you're in a safe place and I'm here with you. And this young man who came in terrified, you could see the oxytocin starting to come into his face and you could see him starting to let go and relax, and then I could start working with him. So that's it.
Yeah, start to think about what he was going to do.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't have to tell you, the first thing you do is you say to him, I'm calling 911, right? Yeah. If you're going to kill yourself, you're not going to do it on my time.
Jump on it, yeah.
Right.
That's beautiful. It's you know, that is beautiful. It's evocative and immensely helpful to people. I mean, the people who are listening are appreciating this because there's a connection there. There's a connection as we talk about it as human beings talking about it over Skype from, you know, hundreds of miles away, but wherever they are. We have people that are listening to this conversation in China. So, you know, and I know they're feeling this way because this is the human condition.
Right.
This is the way we as human beings really actually get along with each other as opposed to having serious conflicts.
Exactly. We're hardwired for attachment. We're hardwired for oxytocin and attachment. The adrenaline and cortisol is just if a tiger is trying to get you or another tribe is going to come and make trouble. Otherwise, the tribe is hardwired for love, for appreciation. That's what how this body is made.
Well, you know, it's interesting because pardon me for getting a little technical on it, but as you say this, I'm just reminded of that Bill Miller conversation because he says this is going on a microbial level. This is the actual things that happen. The evolution of the whole humankind is based on these communication, love, and positive communication networks on a microbial level.
Right.
The whole brain level. But he says your hologenome, which is all of what you are, including the bugs in you and your own brain cells and everything else, that hologenome is looking for a communication process, an effective communication process with others on the same path.
Exactly. I was just reading that when we started to attach as social animals, we start spreading diseases. So the body needed to develop an immune system to protect us from the other person's diseases. So the immune system got all tied up with socialization. And remember I said earlier, people spread oxytocin, and we create healthy bacteria from oxytocin, and then the bacteria create oxytocin, and we've got it all tied together.
Well, that is so interesting because what Dr. Miller said was he discovered that people were having specific vulnerabilities regarding their immunity system not working based on certain personality traits, which is really what you're saying on a level. He just got a little more precise about it.
Right.
And it's what got him interested in this whole underlying communication process.
Well, if you have time, I'll tell you one more story.
Please do.
I run therapy groups, and I had somebody come into my group who has degenerative disease in the spine. She's got arthritis. She's full of pain, and she's sitting in group, and the group is going on, and she doesn't talk, and she's talkative. So I said to her, "What's happening that you're not talking?" She said, "I'm in so much pain. I'm so mad at my pain. I'm just so wrapped up and hollering at my pain, and I'm sick of it, and how long is this going to go on, and when is it going to go away?" And I said to her, when you're mad at your pain, you produce adrenaline and cortisol, and it makes your pain worse. I want you to sit in your pain, and the group is going to hold your pain for you. So the group is sitting with her, connected with her, with loving kindness, tenderness, and caring, and I'm telling her to use the Botanko breathing, and the whole group breathes with her while they hold her pain.
Now, we're touching, Arlene, pardon me for interrupting.
No, we're like psychically holding it. We're just all really caring about her.
I got you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So we are doing the breathing together, and I'm telling her what you need to do, and this work is coming from acceptance commitment therapy from Stephen Hayes. Accept your pain. Just focus on the breath. Let the pain be there. And make it okay to have the pain. And change your focus from the pain to the breath. And when the breath comes in, bring the breath in with loving kindness and gentleness. And when you breathe out, gently breathe out the pain. Well, Chuck, right before our eyes, she said, "I don't have so much pain." She had color in her face, and she participated in the rest of the group. I mean, we were astounded.
That is amazing. Yeah, it is amazing.
I know.
That's what I was asking you, the particulars. I anticipated that it was going to be a good outcome, but I was trying to see what actually happened with you to get an...
Right, how I work with it, right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll tell you, when I'm doing the work, I don't know if it's going to work. I'm going to be embarrassed in front of 8 people that I'm doing this, and she's still full of pain.
I know the feeling. I've been there many times.
So the whole group, we were just like, oh my God, look what we gave her.
Thanks for sharing that. That is such a beautiful image of really evolution and healing, really.
Right.
So very interesting.
And I have one more short story.
Okay.
And that's Jeffrey Schwartz when he says you are not your brain.
Yep.
Well, I go to a restaurant and I have this nice meal and I'm done with the meal. Well, what's the waiter do? He brings in this tray of unbelievable desserts. And my brain says, I'll have one of those. I'll have the cheesecake with strawberries smothering it. Mm-hmm. I take my watcher out, my higher self. I get outside myself and say, you know what? You order that cheesecake. You're going to pack on the pounds? You're going to eat all that sugar? So I said, and this is straight from Jeffrey Schwartz, I said, thank you, brain, for coming up with this wonderful idea that I should eat the cheesecake. And I can accept my brain wanted it, but my higher self said no.
You had an ounce of gratitude there. Moved on back. You were stroking your brain a little bit.
Right.
So it's okay.
Right. I teach my clients, and it's from Jeffrey Schwartz. I have these little business cards, and they say, thank you, brain, and I give them to them. So when the brain comes up with all these stupid ideas, I say, thank you, brain.
That is an interesting, it's sort of a decontamination of cognitive function. Getting down to the underlying principle of essential communication beyond cognition.
There you go.
It's amazing.
So I guess in summary, you can change your blood flow in the brain. You can change your hormones with your thoughts, with a change in behavior, a change in your language, a change in the way you think.
Well, you've given everybody a tremendous set of homework assignments because we all have to relearn. I should say, and it is relearning. It's really recognizing things we intuitively already know. But we do need to think about this more deeply. This is it's just an amazing conversation. I mean, it's very, very helpful and very useful.
Well, and I'm hoping, Chuck, that we're all getting a dose of oxytocin from this interview.
I hope so, too. I know I am. I've said it a couple times. I mean, it's just because you're so intuitively on that communication process, it makes it all of us easier to listen and to connect with the mission that you have, that we really do love one another and that we connect in our lives more effectively and more intimately.
Thank you. So
with that, is there anything else to say?
I think that's it.
It's just so much fun talking to you again, Arlene.
Thank you.
I just love talking to you, girl. It was such a wonderful conversation. We'll do it again sometime because there's always another wrinkle about this material, and I just really appreciate you taking the time. It was such a delightful conversation.
Well, it was a joy in doing this research. It was so much fun to learn all of this and made my work more effective and to share it with you and our guests.
Thank you so much, Arlene. You have a pleasant evening. Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.